Right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Broken Responder podcast. My name is Richard Burns. I am the host and founder of the podcast. We created this podcast because I know as a retired first responder, there are other responders out there who have just experienced hell. And thankfully, I have Melissa and Justin Doubrava here with me this afternoon. And we're going to go through their story. They're both first responders. Melissa has her story. Justin has his story. And then I guess the way it goes, a lot of first responders are married to other first responders. And so the good thing we're going to go through is how they worked through this together as a couple to get past individual traumas and then the trauma we also carry as a married couple. So, Melissa, without further ado, the floor is yours, and take us through your story.
Okay, so my parents were both first responders, and so I grew up in a first responder household where, birthdays were always held a few days before or after because emergencies don't care if it's your birthday, it's going to happen no matter what. And so growing up, I always wanted to be a first responder. I at first wanted to be law enforcement because my parents were both law enforcement, but also did other things along the way. And so when I graduated from high school, I was going into college. I did an internship with the sheriff's office that my mom worked for, and when I was doing the internship, I'd spend a few months with each department. And so I went through like emergency management, dispatch, the coroner, and everyone. And there were some times I was like, yeah, I really want to do this, and other times I'm like, what am I getting myself into? And throughout all of that with my college, I was learning mine was criminal justice with an emphasis in law enforcement. And so as I'm learning things in college, then you see what actually happens when you're on the street and stuff. And those two aren't always the same thing.
Right?
So I was like, maybe I want to go into EMS. Maybe I want to go into fire. And then, life just kind of happened. And I was with dispatch a lot. And I really liked dispatch because, one, it was always dark in there. They always had the best snacks. And I was like, this way I don't have to be out in the weather and all that stuff.
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
so when I moved to Colorado, nope, I'm so sorry. Our dog's the postman is here, so I apologize.
Oh, no, that's okay. It happens.
Um,
It happens.
they don't like UPS for some reason. I am so sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. I'm just worried mine are probably going to happen here eventually, too. So it's completely okay.
Okay, I muted myself. We also have a puppy who likes to scream whenever someone is
Oh,
here, so
no.
I
Yes.
apologize.
Yes.
Kind of like,
No,
anyways.
that's
So,
okay.
so when I moved to Colorado, I saw that they had an opening for dispatch, and so I said, you know what, like let's just go for it here. And becoming a dispatcher, a lot of people think it's like a secretary position. You're just answering phones, and I understood what it meant because I had my parents and everything, and so I was like, no, that's not at all. But having to deal with like the customer, because it is customer service, it is someone that is calling because they need something, but they're
Right.
not calling just to say, hey, how are you doing? Like they're calling on their very worst day. And so it was hard for me to learn that while you still need to like treat people with respect and have that professionalism, there are times that you have to like be stern and say, no, I need to take control of this phone call. And I think that being a dispatcher also helped me to see like what kind of trauma that isn't talked about with dispatch, because everyone's like, well, you didn't see it, so why do you have any, like, you don't have PTSD, you don't have any of that.
Yep.
And also just like the lack of support when it came from like the higher ups with the different agencies and things. And so that's why we're here today, is so that I can also share my experiences from being a dispatcher and also seeing the different areas of first response. Because when I was doing my internship with law enforcement, I have a little bit of a mouth on me, and there were times like someone's gonna spit it in your face, and you're like, "What are you doing?" And then you
How am
like
I going to react to that?
exactly, yeah. And so that really taught me like I don't think the street's right for you, sweetheart. So but dispatch was really where my heart and everything was. I loved going to work every single day, even on those bad days, because you knew that no matter what, you were helping somebody, even if your help was just being that last voice that they heard. And I think that that was very impactful, but you also have a lot of stress that comes with it.
Oh, I can't even imagine. So, I guess so. A little bit on my background. So, my wife was also a dispatcher for my agency when I was working there. As a matter of fact, just before I retired, she had left dispatch and transferred to another part of the city. But like the stuff that like she would come home and talk about, like I couldn't even imagine. Like she had there was a phone call where like this dude literally told her where to find their body, and then like she heard the gunshot, and I'm like, but there's no closure for the dispatchers ever. Like they're basically left out to dry, and that's the crappy thing.
Absolutely. And it's hard when you're in like a larger agency because the agency I worked for, we dispatched for 13 counties. And so like with the local counties, you would sometimes get closure because you'd see a news report or you'd see something. But those other counties where you would get, that final call, you don't know what happened. Like, was that actually like the end of that person's life or what was it? And I think what's not talked about enough with dispatch is that like, so first, police, fire, EMS, you guys get the tones, you guys get the call, but dispatch already has that call. And so there's no, I guess, time to kind of gather yourself when you answer that call. You don't know what's going to be on the other end of that line. So you're either going to dispatch someone's worst day or someone misdialed you and it's something else. And what I learned in training is that like the majority of your 911 calls are a misdial. It's a kid that's calling, it's something. And then you have that 10% where it is, you need all hands on deck and you're about to go through like a shitstorm. I'm so sorry. You're about to go through like a lot. Really,
you're fine. We're all adults, so.
Oh, okay. But I always talked with Justin about that. Is that like with EMS and fire and law, you guys kind of get a chance to prepare for what you're about to see. Like you give as much description as you can, what dispatch does, but there's no time to prepare for what's going to be on the other end of that phone. And the second part of that is that while you have people on that really, really bad call, you have more people calling in on their really, really bad call. And so you don't have a break to kind of separate like and process, wow, what just happened? You just have to keep going and going. And it's like,
yeah.
And so like with EMS, you dispatch out one ambulance and then you have another EMS call, you have that other ambulance go to that one. But with dispatch, you just get it all day long. And so that's something that is very hard to deal with sometimes.
Yeah, no, I get it. I know that there were, like, I felt bad for our dispatchers at night because we would come into work at like 10 o'clock and we'd have over 100 calls of service just waiting, stacked. And it's like, well, let's go. And then, but they don't get that break either. Like you said, it's just, like you basically, it goes in one air, it's processed through the computer and it's on the screen and gone the next. And it's crazy how it just happens that way.
And trying to get all the information, type it out while you're trying to also figure out like what part of this do I need to be airing and what part of this can they see in their CAD notes. Or the worst time is when everything is hitting the fan and CAD is down. And so you're trying to update people manually and you're like, I don't know what ambulance is there because I forgot who I paged out. And so, but yeah, trying to make sure that you're documenting appropriately while also like airing out, new updates or something. And so the agency I worked for, at night we only had 2 of us on and we were still dispatching 13 counties. And then during the day we would have between 3 and 4 of us, but each of us had our own radio. And so you are responsible for each radio, and that could consist of police, fire, EMS, wildlife, Forest Service, like any state or federal agency, and then others. And then the other radios, you are dealing with that, but you're in a different county, so you're also dealing with their police, fire, EMS, state, all of that. And so you're like, if snow days were the worst because we had I-70 corridor, so I-70 Eisenhower and all the way to Denver, and we also had Vail Pass and Rabbit Ears. You put all that together when it's snowing, like he would come in and they'd just be like, hey, how you guys doing? We brought you guys candy. And like, we're just like, get out.
Yeah, somebody's going to die. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Get out. We don't have time for this right now. But yeah, and surprisingly, so we didn't actually meet through dispatch or like through our jobs. I I mean, yes and no, but we had a mutual friend and he moved up here from the Front Range, and the mutual friend texted me and said, "Hey, there's this new paramedic in town, like y'all should go get dinner." And I was like, but anyway, so we went and had dinner, and our paths kind of went away, and he'll tell you more about that part.
Sure.
But then we had a barricaded subject, and so SWAT was going out, and so they were staging at our center so that they could get briefed and everything. I go to open the door, and this handsome man is at the door.
Is
And I
right
was
there.
like, yeah, I was like, oh, okay. So I was like, that must be a sign. So that's, yeah. But I think that having a spouse that is a responder, I know a lot of people are like, well, they always marry like doctors and nurses or someone that's also in first response, but the trauma that you both go through every single day, like there's when you talk to someone that's like not in first response, they're like, how can you deal with that? And it's like,
Mhm.
that's literally every day, you know? And so I think that's why we get drawn to each other is we, you
And
know.
I think, and I don't know, you're familiar with Karen Labor, the
Karen,
therapist? Karen
I'm not.
Labor. It's maybe the Rethink Mental Health. I don't know if you guys are familiar with her. I had her last week on, and it was kind of funny because she was talking about issues like those, and it's just like the stuff that happens. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's like almost bonding through trauma, you know what I mean? Where
Yeah.
Yeah,
in the
it
movies
is.
you see someone fall in love after a traumatic experience together and they're like, oh, you
Right.
rescued me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kind of like
Right.
that, but daily.
Yes.
Yeah, but daily, it's like, wow, I know that you had a, I can just hear the sirens going through town. I'm like, he's about to have a really bad day. And so I'm like
Yes.
cleaning the house, getting dinner ready. And that's another thing that we kind of just adopted over time is that just knowing when, especially if I was working his radio, I knew like what kind of day we both had, and obviously vice versa. And so we both, if one of us wasn't working, the other one would make dinner, make sure the house was clean, take care of the
Yep.
dogs, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And then as soon as they walk through the door, it's like, do you want to talk or do you want silence? Because sometimes you're just like, I just need to not talk about like obviously not breaking HIPAA, not breaking any laws, but sometimes you
Right.
just need to be like, today sucked,
You
you
got to
know?
vent a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And then, so I think that's something that really helped us too. Or if we were both working, we're like, do you want to sit around a fire and just, be in silence for a little bit and then we can get some pizza? Or it was kind of just knowing though and being there for each other of like, and recognizing if something's getting too much. And we were both
Yep.
once we first started dealing with the traumas by how everyone I think in first response does, you go take a few drinks and a few drinks come into a few shots and all that, and everyone's together, so it's like this is how we're healing. But then after a while it's like that's not what's fixing it. And so we both went to therapy and we're like, wow, this actually is really good, this is way better than waking up hungover. um,
Right. Yes.
but then being able to see in each other like, hey, I think that this call is like really heavy on you or something is going on, and then kind of recognize that, because sometimes you don't recognize it in yourself that you're
Yep.
going down that dark hole again. But that's been
I
really great.
and I think you brought up another point, like growing up with it, because I know we did it with our boys. We would, there was times Christmas was either a day or two late or a day or two early. Sometimes birthdays had to be changed due to work schedules or what we could or couldn't get vacations off for. So,
Yep.
yes, like, I mean, our boys went through that. We had to deal with it. And like, it's stressful sometimes. And I know, like, now my wife looks at it and she's like, I just want Monday through Friday. I want weekends and holidays off. Like, she's like, I just want banker's hours. And now that she has it, I mean, it's crazy to see the change in her, just kind of like having those times off now.
Oh, absolutely. And you don't think about it when you're rotating shifts. One week your days, one week your graves. Like, you don't think about it in the time because that's what you have to do. Like,
Right.
somebody's got to be there. But I don't think that you really realize that how bad it is, especially on nights, because people are doing construction outside when you're trying to
Hmm.
sleep, no matter how, and if you have your like noise canceling earphones on, then you miss your alarm. But It used to when I was a kid. It was very hard for me to understand why my parents were always leaving. I was like, why my birthday only comes once a year. But as I got older, I got to see like, no, they're going because someone else's family needs them, and that's kind of how I've adopted it with Justin. I'm like, someone else's family needs you more in this moment right here than I do. I'm fine. You need to go
Right.
help them. But I think that that was something that even my parents tried to explain. But when you're young, you're like, why do you care about a plane crash? Like, you should care about a plane crash. That's not what I'm
Right.
saying. But
Yeah.
like, why are you leaving my event to go to that? There's other people. Why can't they go? But
Yep.
sometimes you are that person that has to go.
Yeah, no, I get it. And I think, yeah, I know my boys struggled with it a lot. And there was times that, like, I know with even within the last couple years, like, I looked at my boys and I was like, if I was, like, ever kind of a jerk to you guys growing up, like, sorry, like, I raised you the only way that I knew how. And, like, if I was ever really too stern or mean with you guys, like, I am super sorry. And I hope you can forgive me for it. And surprisingly, thankfully, wasn't anything crazy, but yeah, like some of this stuff just really weighs heavy on us.
It does. And there's times that like you come home to like kiddos and stuff and you hug them even extra tighter, and then there's other
Hmm.
times that you're like so mad, like how can someone do that to somebody else? Like you're supposed to be there to, especially when obviously kids involved, is a hard call for anybody.
Oh
And I think
yeah.
those ones, I think those are up there with like officer involved or responder
Hmm.
involved. But those are the ones that you just sit back and you're just like, and it's so hard. And how do you explain that to, when you're holding your kid extra close, like they're like,
Yep.
can you let me go? Especially if they're at that age where they're like, why are you touching me? Like,
Hmm. Yeah.
but it's also hard when you're working those different shifts. You're like, I'm exhausted. You're waking me up. Like, what is like, and I want to sleep.
And I think one of the things that we also fail to do, across all the first responder professions is we fail to look at like the sleep study schedules that
Oh
also
yeah.
bug with people too, because I think the last thing I saw was it was a minimum of 3 weeks to orient your sleep schedule to the new shift schedule. And like we're having people bounce, 1 week on days, 1 week on nights, and going back and forth. And like we're
Yeah,
just trashing our people physically. I mean, because that's why
absolutely.
you see a bunch of those folks that just work overnights have terrible health conditions.
Oh yeah. Well, and overnight, the only thing, unless you have made your lunch, the
Oh
only thing
yeah.
that's open is the convenience store. And then, but a lot of times you make your lunch, but it's something you either have to like kind of put together and then heat up. You can't walk away from the radio that long, or you're
Right.
on a call and you're like, I'm literally having to sit here on this scene for 12 hours. Like,
Hmm.
but it's crazy. And I remember there was one time that we were so short staffed, and I was usually day shift and they were 12-hour shifts. And for some reason I went from a day shift working 6 a to 6 p to a swing shift, which was 2 p.m. to 2 a.m. And then that next day I was on a grave and I was working 6 p to 6 a. And I
Ooh.
was like, I'm not safe to be working right now. And it was a snow day on a busy radio, and I was like looking at people. I'm like, I shouldn't be here right now. And then there's,
Yeah.
you're working with different officers and responders because they're also like, who is this voice and why don't you know what you're doing? It's like I
Right.
haven't slept, but it's also the fact that so many of the responders, all of the agencies across the board are always so short staffed, and then
Yeah.
people you have to pick up the overtime, you have to do whatever you have to because someone has to be there. There's not like, sorry, 911 or, responders aren't going to respond because we don't have anybody.
And I think the sad thing is like especially right now, like you talked about, as far as like we don't have as many responders.
Yeah.
Um, like there's no time to decompress on anything. It's you get one trauma, you box that up as best you can. You go to the next one, you get another trauma, box that up, and it just man,
And
that's the burnout is terrible.
it is. And I always thought that like the call that would stay with me, I'm like, why is that call staying with me? And then my therapist is like, it's not that call. It was the 17 calls prior that you never addressed or never, tried to fix. That was just the last thing that your brain could handle. That's why it's staying with you. And with dispatch, especially, like even though you don't see it, your brain is trying to paint a picture as to what exactly is going on, and then you are trying to then verbalize what exactly is going on. And so your brain is trying to piece together like what is the biggest hazard right now for the people going in, and how can I protect them through that, while you're listening to someone scream on the phone, trying to gain control of that. But you also still have your other responders running traffic, running parties, having 15 other emergencies happening. And so the voices are the thing that like stuck so hard, especially like the screams. There was probably 2 years that if I heard a child scream in a store, I would like have a physical reaction to it.
Oh,
And I was like, it was so bad. I'd have to look at it and be like, well, I guess you're shopping by yourself because I can't be in here anymore.
yep.
And it takes so long to untrain your brain that like they're not the ones in danger right now. But it
Yeah.
takes it definitely messes with your brain chemistry.
Yeah, it does. Uh, was there ever a way that you figured out how to decompress from all of this?
I used to be a runner. I would run miles upon miles upon miles. And then EMDR was amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Um, I really loved EMDR. I know that EMDR saved both of our lives several times, but and I think that one of the hardest things was knowing that you can't save everybody because you're
Hmm.
like in the profession to save everybody. And so the first death for me was like the hard, like really really hard, and then it was kind of scary because it got so like easy for me to just go on to the next call. And my therapist is like, yeah, that's because you just compartmentalize that, it's just in your brain. And I'm like, that's someone's worst day, and I move on, like what are we having for lunch?
Yep.
And so that's also, I had to like check myself a few times to be like, that's a little bit too dark. We're going down a slippery slope. But EMDR and running or any sort of exercise, like hitting the punching bag, we were lucky that at my agency across the hallway was a gym that we could use anytime.
Oh, okay.
And it was several times that I would just walk over there and beat the daylights out of a punching bag. But
There you
like,
go.
yeah, like today
Better,
was not good.
better than an HR complaint, I guess. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Oh, okay. Man. Uh, did you ever have that kind of final point where you realized you needed that help? Like it got to that point and like there was that definite breaking point that changed, or was a tipping point for you?
Yeah, so there was a call that, without getting too graphic, it involved both the loss of life and a child, but the child was not the one who lost their life. But it was the way that it happened that, man, that stuck with me, and that was the call that I thought was going to end my life, because he was on a 24-hour shift. I was telling my parents, and at first I didn't think that it was as bad as it was. Like this, the voice was just like staying with me. And so I did my normal thing, I went on a run, I was like writing in my journal and all that stuff. And as the night progressed, it was getting worse. And so I was like texting my supervisor like, hey, I'm really struggling with something, I don't think I can make it in tomorrow. And when I called them, I was like, do we have any crisis line or like, any of that peer support? And they're like, well, are you going to be at your shift tomorrow? And I was like, I don't think you understand me right now. Like, I need something or I will not be here tomorrow. And they were like, okay, well, I guess I can find someone to cover your shift. And I was like, okay, yeah. So I called a different supervisor and I was like, hey, I'm just calling to let you know that, this call is really staying with me. And that supervisor was amazing. They stayed on the phone with me and they came over, they let him know. And I was like, but I had to do EMDR. It was called was it a crisis? It was a trauma intervention, I think is what they called it. But I did EMDR two
Oh,
times
okay.
a day, 4 days in a row, and so it was hard. It was like, it was a lot of tears. But
I, and I don't think anybody truly understands like the amount of emotions you go through just in one EMDR session. And it's,
oh
I mean,
yeah,
you're talking 30, 45 minutes max. And like when you come out of these, like you are just mentally and physically, like you are just spent for the day. And it's so like
absolutely.
I would try to do mine later in the afternoon. Um,
Mhm.
just because if I didn't first thing in the morning at 8 a.m., like I was
I'm
so unproductive.
Oh yeah, and it's crazy because you don't realize the things that are attaching to that one, it wasn't
Hmm.
that call. It was something that happened. This was a crazy pipeline of what we figured out during that trauma intervention. Was that call reminded me of when I did CPR on my grandma, which reminded me of a not great time with my grandma, which then reminded me of a childhood friend that I had lost similarly to that prior call, which then reminded me of something I saw on a TV show. All of that connected to then bring me to where I was at. But I was like,
Wow.
it was insane, and the therapist was amazing because he's like, tell me what you're smelling, tell me what this is, tell me what that is, and then he would find something where I would react to it, and he's like, let's latch onto that, and then
Right.
if you haven't done EMDR,
It
it is
is.
amazing.
Yes.
You will cry though. You will
Oh,
cry.
so for me, the EMDR part was like I grew up with, that generation of you don't talk, you don't do anything, you don't cry. And so for me, the hardest part in EMDR was getting into that emotional intelligence and being able to feel. And then when I finally felt, like that was the worst pain like possible. Like it was
Oh yeah.
just miserable.
It hits you everywhere because it's like in your stomach, and then you leave and you're just like a puddle of emotions. And it's
Yep.
also crazy that like when you're a kid you don't think of certain things as a trauma, but your brain does, and then you just keep every single what I also didn't know is that every single person is going to have trauma. Like it doesn't matter one person, we can all go through the exact same life, exact same experiences, exact same everything. And even if I think it's not a trauma, someone else will still have that as a trauma. And so that was interesting for me to learn too, is that
Yeah.
just because like you're not there, there's vicarious trauma, there's all this other, kinds of trauma.
Yep.
So it was amazing to learn, but also it was just a lot.
Right. And that was one of the other things, like, I didn't even think about, like, initially until my wife and I started going through our journey. She's got PTSD secondary to me, tertiary to me. I mean, the first one, she was at work, but she wasn't on the radio when my first shooting happened. But somebody heard it and, like, got her over there. And then on the second one, she wasn't at the police department at the time, and I, like, immediately as soon as she answered and I told her, like, you could just, oh yeah.
Absolutely. It's an officer involved is the worst. Like I worked one, and that was one of the worst days because you also don't know, like, you can say that you're okay, like, hey, I don't have any holes, I'm okay, I'm safe,
Right.
but your brain still is like, no, they're not, you
Right.
have to see them, and then once you see them, then you're still like, but are you sure? um
Yeah. Yep.
like, and there was a time I was on the radio and he got into an accident in the ambulance, and that was like, I was so, and they were in a spot that the radio reception was already really bad. And then, like, we heard the call out that they needed another ambulance. And I'm like, why are you calling out another ambulance? And then I was like, trying to figure it out. And I was like, they were just in an accident. But we couldn't get in touch with them because they had no radio, they had no cell phone. And so we had to wait until fire got on scene. And that was the longest 12 minutes of my life.
Oh no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
his driver hit a deer. They were
Oh
okay.
no.
The ambulance was not. The deer was not. They were okay.
That was also good. Yeah. Oh, wow. uh I don't
But yeah,
know.
officer involved shootings are very, and it's very emotional because then you also have the social media side of it where someone
Oh
hears it on the
yeah.
scanner, and then you have everyone calling in, and you have all this speculation. And I think the speculation then just does something to you too, because in your heart you're like, well, what if, they're not, what if that's actually right, what if someone saw it differently than somebody else? And I think that it's scary in the world that we're in, and that's, I think that it's a really good time to be talking about the PTSD and responders
Oh
because
yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, it's well, I mean, you look at, rumors are DPD lost an officer to suicide yesterday.
oh my gosh.
Um, you've got, there was an officer there in North Glen. There's a couple other DPD officers over the last few years. Even down here in Pueblo, we've had 3 firefighters take their
Oh my gosh.
lives.
Oh my god.
And I mean, it's absolutely terrible. And for me, the one thing that I wanted to do was, I don't think we talk about this stuff enough.
Absolutely. No.
And so for me, like, my tiny little voice right now, just trying to find folks that are willing to share their stuff. And hopefully one of these days we'll get money to kind of make sure we permanently have mental health available for everybody instantly.
Absolutely. And we also have told a lot of our friends about you. There's the county next to us, they have a really amazing crisis advisor. What is she?
Crisis support.
Oh,
She's
okay,
amazing.
cool.
And so she'll probably be reaching out to you because she's really wanting, we, uh, we have lost, we've lost several locally, but there was one that really hit our community very, very hard.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that any of the other ones didn't hit our community hard. It was just he was very involved in a lot of different parts of the community, and
Yeah.
so she is really taking it head on. And she's like, we're going to make a change. So
Yeah.
we
It,
let her know
uh,
about you, but
I appreciate that. And I think that was one of the kind of, I guess, one of the other things that, talking to the therapist I did last week, because I asked her, I was like, it's such a weird correlation, all the first responder suicide funerals you go to, and they talk about, the person was dependable, they were reliable, they did everything for everybody. And the way that she put it is kind of, picture it as a Stanley Cup, with 10 different straws in it,
yes.
everybody's sucking, all of it out of that Stanley, but nobody's replenishing it. And that's those go-to folks. And yeah, just that little
Absolutely.
example, I was like, holy cow, like that makes so much sense.
Absolutely. And what was like crazy about his, well, he was always the jokester. He will always play a prank on you, and he got us good so many times. He has been around since we first started dating, and man, he used to play pranks on us on the radio all the time. But he was a firefighter and an EMT for both our area and then the county next to us. And he what I think hit the hardest or hit the worst was that we had both talked to him within like 48 hours of him taking his life, and he had just gotten married. He was just getting back from his honeymoon. He was like, oh yeah, we need to go out for poker, we're all these things. And he was talking about the next time he was going to work with Justin. And then the next thing we know, that's the call that we get. And it was
Oh,
so it was, and I know that they say like the strongest people are the ones that cry in silence, and he was always the one that he would like talk to us about when he had bad calls. Like he was like, you guys understand it. And so that was a hard loss for us.
yeah, that definitely is. I mean, and like poor dude, like, I mean, there was probably some other stuff on his plate that he was,
Absolutely.
definitely struggling with. And I know even from my journey, like, man, trying to be completely honest with folks about all the stuff you're struggling with is, it's so, I don't know if I can figure out the best way to put it right now, but it's intimidating sometimes, and it's scary. And then also at the same time, it's so uncomfortable because it's like running around, naked,
Yeah.
because you don't feel protected.
Yeah, you're telling someone your deepest, darkest secrets. And I think that's also what's hard with therapy is that you're telling someone like, hey, this really messed me up. And you have to let that kind of armor down. And when Justin tells you his story, he can definitely dive deeper into that because that was when he lost his friend. That is, I think, what kind of changed us in knowing like the drinking is not helping us. Like we
Right.
weren't fighting, like we weren't fighting at all. Like we didn't have, it wasn't that kind of a thing. It was more like we still are waking up having that same darkness, but now we're depressed because we have a hangover and we don't feel good.
Yep.
And you don't, it's things that you don't think about because at the time you're sitting with all of the people that you're running into these calls with, and
Hmm.
everyone's doing the same thing. And then when you take the alcohol away from it, you realize like, wow, none of us are actually talking about all of the messed up shit that we're just like, yeah,
Yes.
like today really sucked. You want another cold one? Like, and you don't think about it at that time because it's like everyone else is smiling, like I should be good too. But
Yeah, alcohol and first responders is just synonymous, just like the military. I mean, we all
really
sit around and we bullshit, but I think the worst thing we do to our own detriment is, we always talk about getting together and not discussing work, but we get together, we drink, and all we do is talk about work.
Exactly. It's like when you think about we got thinking about that when we stopped drinking. We were like, what do we actually like? Like what do we do? Like
Right?
and that then you saw all your friends like, hey, you guys want to come out tonight? And it's like, no, we're staying in. And they're like, okay. And so they're still doing that. And then when you're like, oh yeah, well we don't drink anymore. They're like, we didn't even know you had a problem. I'm like, it wasn't like the alcohol that was the problem. It was like our brains were the problem. Like
Right?
our jobs and what we're seeing. Like that's the problem. So
Yes.
it was just, and it's crazy because I'm like, you guys can still come over and you guys can drink, and they're like, yeah.
Yeah.
You end up finding out that you really love the place you're paying a $1,400 mortgage on. Like,
Yeah, we love
I
it.
kind of like being a homebody now. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
1 year ago, me would have made fun of me, but
Yeah, now we're doing home remodeling. We're like
Yeah.
teaching the dogs cool tricks besides the mailman. I don't know, but
Right. Yes.
yeah, we learned how to cook, and yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and that was kind of one of the things, like, through the journey I did was like, man, when I hit my 40s and all of my stuff, it was like, if you don't bring any peace or like serenity to my life, like if there's nothing qualitative or quantitative that you have for me, like you're gone. I mean, I deleted so many ex-coworkers off of social media. I even went as far as deleting phone numbers. Like, if I wasn't good enough to talk to when I was at my worst, like, I'm still not going to talk to you. So,
Absolutely. And it's crazy because then you see those people like after you block them and delete them and stuff, and they're like, oh yeah, like what you been up to lately? And it's like, we don't have anything in common. Like we did
right.
when, but it's like, we don't have to fake that we like each other.
Hmm.
We don't work together anymore. I don't have to deal with you anymore. Like, let's not make it awkward. We're adults. You don't have to like everybody, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy, especially when you like we live in a small town too, so you see everybody, and you're like, "Oh, what you been up to?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, well, we went to the casino, blew a bunch of money." I'm like, "We blew a bunch of money renovating our house, so
Right. Yes.
whatever." But do you want to switch me? Do you have any more
No.
questions, or I can switch in spots?
Well, actually, also, while you got you both here, you can stay there.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Oh
You don't
no,
have to
I was
swap.
gonna I was just so he was in front of you, but
Oh, okay.
I
Yeah.
was just gonna swap
Oh, yeah.
where we
No,
were sitting.
perfect. So I was going to say, Justin, so having a wife as a dispatcher, did you get hosed also on calls? Like, because my
let me
wife
tell
would.
you what.
You know what? I'm just gonna walk
I have
around.
a thing to tell you. Okay.
Okay.
This one time,
Oh boy, here we go.
okay, there were puppies to be pet at a local fair. And there I was, and I sent her a text, and I was like, she loves puppies. I'm going to show her there's a bunch of puppies. How can you have a bad day with puppies? So I sent her a text, and what I didn't know it did is lit a fire, and it made her mad.
I was
Oh,
on
Big
no.
mad. Okay?
on a voluntold 12. I was supposed to work 4. I
Oh,
got a
yep.
12-hour
So
shift.
she got some
Yep.
overtime. I sent her a picture of the puppies, and I was like, look, I'm cuddling all these cute puppies. And she was like, oh, okay. And it's fine. And I was like,
Oh,
okay,
yeah. You're
what
done
is
for,
going
man.
on? Done for. We were newer in our marriage, so I didn't know. I was like, oh, it must be fine. It is okay. Like, it's just, boy, did I
Yep.
find out. She got
Yes.
on the radio and said, show you guys clear from the fairgrounds. I hope you have a quiet night. And
Oh.
I ran, I
Oh.
think, 9 calls after that. And for this system, that is astronomically busy. And
Yeah.
she was like, you got what you deserved. Because you
Oh.
cheated on me with some dogs. You pet those doggies without me.
Man, those phone lines lit up so quick. They're like, "What did you just say?"
Yes.
She
Oh,
did it over
yeah.
the open air, and it was like, I hope you have a quiet
Oh.
shift.
Oh, man.
And I got a bunch of messages from other responders that were like, what did you do to her?
Yes.
And I was
Right.
like, you wouldn't believe it. I pet dogs.
Yes.
She said it was fine.
Right.
That is when I learned being fine was not fine.
Right. Yes. Exactly. So, Justin, tell us your story. Like, how did you get involved in being a first responder? Like, what sparked you?
Oh, you know, I started in first response in 2009, so I've been doing this 16 years.
Okay.
Um, I started out going to college, and I thought I wanted to be. I was like, I want to be a doctor, so I went to CU. What was it University of Colorado at Denver?
Okay.
Um, it was like CU Denver. So I started out there going to college, and I was doing really good. I was living at home with my parents, and I was getting straight A's. I'm like, very book smart, not as street savvy, if you will,
Sure.
afterwards. That
Right.
common sense comes with slow learning. But I moved in with my brother and my cousin, and from there it just started like kind of partying, right? Trying to
Hmm.
chase some ladies.
Yep.
And it was never successful. I was very successful at partying and drinking, but not the lady front. No.
Okay.
So I, started drinking a lot and going to school, and my grades started coming down. I got put on probation at the college, kind of like due to grades,
Yep.
to keep
GPA is too low.
the money coming in. You have to keep your GPA at a certain point to keep the grants and all that. And they were like, hey, you need to bring this up by next semester. You can go be a CNA, you can go to EMT school, go to a community college, and then come back. We won't cancel your admission. You can come back. And I was like, well, what's a CNA? And I was like, wait, my sister's doing that. I definitely don't want to do that. And I
Yeah,
was like, what is
right.
an EMT? And they're like, they work on an ambulance. And I was like, that's kind of cool. I guess we'll do that.
Okay.
So I went to community college, enrolled, and started there. And I found out like trying to get your first EMS job was very difficult when you're how
Hmm.
old was I guess that'd be
Right. 18,
2008. I must have
19.
been 20.
Oh,
I
okay.
must have
Yep.
been 20 trying to get my first job. And a lot of places were like not wanting to hire you when you're 20 because you really don't have the driving experience. You don't have
Yep.
any experience. And so I'm like, well, how are you supposed to get experience if you can't get hired to start?
Yes.
So come to find out, it's a good idea in those bigger areas to go volunteer for a little bit.
Okay. Yep.
And so I started volunteering at a small fire department and went through the fire academy, got my fire one, and then got on with a private EMS agency and started from there. And I put in, I think, like 6 or 7 years there, somewhere like that. Started in '09, left in 2016. So, yeah, 7 years with a private
Okay.
EMS agency. And um, it was a busy system, between transfers and 911 calls, and then the nursing home 911, and
Oh,
like
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
all of that kind of stuff. So it was kind of a weird system because you'd run overflow calls for like Denver Health and things, and you'd run your other 911 calls, but then you'd get these interfacility transfers, and it was more of like a 60-40 mix with like 60% being some form of 911 and then 40% transfers. So
Okay.
um, I started doing that, and after 2 years, I think at there, I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna try paramedic school, give it a second go." I tried paramedic school initially when I was volunteering at the fire department, and um, ended up freezing on a chest pain call as my captain at the time and kind of mentor was like, "Hey, you're about to start your clinicals. Run this chest pain." Well, I had the experience at a rural fire department. I didn't have experience.
Oh, yeah. Gotcha.
So the first time I went through, being book smart, I was able to get through the classroom portion just fine, but it came to like actually performing on scene, and I
Yep.
literally froze on a chest pain. And he's like, you need to reevaluate your future and maybe get some more experience before you try this because it may cost someone their life. And so
Yeah. Sure.
I did just that. I worked at a private agency for a couple of years and really did well. And I started getting the hang of it because I am a very hands on learner. If I don't do it, I won't remember it.
Sure.
But once I
Yep.
do it and I do it over and over, I end up becoming very proficient and very good at it. And it
Yeah.
just clicks.
Yep.
So I went back to paramedic school in Lakewood at St. Anthony's Hospital, went through their paramedic program.
Okay.
I did my internship rides in North Glen, which was a great experience, very busy, um, and worked as a paramedic until it was 2015 when I first got burnt out and decided to take a little bit of a break. I never left the ambulance, I just went part time,
Okay.
and then went full time at a research clinic. And I was like, hey, this is a good, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can be an office man. I was not an office man. I got bored. I twirled in
Right.
that chair. I can't look at binders all day. I can't check meds all day. I can't weigh urine. I can't spin blood. I can't do any of
Right.
that. I'm like, I need to be out. And
Yes.
so, need to be out in the wild, Um, but within that first, like, 7 years at the private EMS agency, we never really dealt with trauma. Like,
Sure.
we never dealt with PTSD. And I just remember a supervisor coming up at one point, and I was like, hey, that call kind of sucked. It was like, well, if you can't handle it, suck it up or get out. Like, what do you
Yeah.
mean you can't move on? Like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, yeah, it has nothing to do with going from an auto ped to transfer back home. You know
Yep.
what I mean? Like, and
Yeah.
you don't have time to process because of these busy agencies. It's like, if you're not transporting someone, you're not making money. So you really need the unit utilization to be really high.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
you're going
yeah.
to be running between 8 to 12 plus calls a shift in your 12-hour
Yeah.
shifts. So they want you just going like this. And
And there's
so
no time to
you never have
decompress.
time to decompress. You don't have time to process. And so, that was kind of the first introduction to like therapy, was suck it up or get out. And I was like,
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
maybe it's normal. I'll just shove it down. And so then I started kind of hanging out with there's cliques at everywhere you go. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Yep.
If you're working somewhere with 100+ people, there's a
Yes.
couple cliques.
Yes,
You
there
got the guys
is.
that like to party and like to have a couple drinky drinks. And so I kind of got in with one of those cliques where it's like, hey, we're on nights and we go to the bar at 8 a.m. Cool.
Yeah.
We can do that. And then you have a couple, and then you wait a couple hours, and then you drive home sober-ish.
Yes.
Um,
Right.
make your commute home, and then take a nap and wake
Go
up and do it
back.
all over again. But I think it was hard too because it was a range of shifts. Like, I was in it, initially, like, I wanted to save the world. So I was going to
Hmm.
work as much as I could and as much as my young body could take. And so it took so much of a toll, though, physically and mentally, because I'm doing 12s. I'm trying to pick up some additional overtime shifts for 24-hour shifts in other areas because as a private company, you could work in the other districts that they have. So we could
Okay.
work in Denver. We could go pick up shifts in Golden if we wanted. We could pick up shifts in like Longmont. So you
Okay.
could work in the different areas and work their shifts or cover parts of them. And overtime was whatever. So
Oh,
they had these
yeah.
things
I'm
called
sure.
power cars where if you came in from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. on the busiest day, you could either run 6 calls and go home early, or they could send you on a long distance transfer to Pueblo, and you'd be like, oh man. But so
Right.
there was like no processing it, but I did end up finding alcohol during the mix of this, and it was kind of cool to go with your boss because you looked up to them. You wanted to go have some
Yep.
drinks with your boss, and guess what? Every time the bosses went, it was free.
Oh, yeah.
It was on their tab. They were like, "We know what you make, and we make more, so drink up."
Yeah.
And so I don't know how many times I ended up back at our station and passing out until I could drive home.
And I think that's the other like terrible part of that culture is just I mean, other than, shoving it down, there's nothing better than depressing it more with alcohol on top of it. So,
I, and I kind of started to try to deal with it about that time in 2015 when I kind of felt like I was getting burnt out. I didn't exactly do any research on trauma. I didn't try to find out what was going on with me. I just knew that something was going on, and I just was like, man, I thought I was going crazy, to be honest. Like, the first starts of PTSD for me, and looking back on it, hindsight's always 2020,
yep.
it wasn't normal to be sitting in the living room. And I lived with one of my best friends at the time, Eric Proct, and he was a paramedic, and we lived together, and that was a great experience anyways. But living there, it wasn't normal while he was on nights and I was on days or whatever, to be sitting alone in the living room with the TV off in my t-shirt and underwear and just drenched in sweat, having flashbacks from the previous
Oh, yeah.
4 or 5 years and just reliving them every day. And it started like that, and then I would go to these parties all the time where they had parties once a week with all the EMS people. And
Hmm.
um what I didn't realize is every time I started going around groups of people, I started breaking out in a sweat. And I was
Oh,
like, what is this? I was like, I probably, I have something uncurable. I'm dying.
yeah,
And so then
right.
I was like, oh, this is weird. You know what? If I drink 2 beers before I go into these places, I don't sweat. It must be, I just need to relax a little. I need to
Hmm.
chill. So then I drink a couple beers and then go to these things and I was fine. So I was like, I found my own fix. That's my therapy. It's alcohol. It works.
Right.
Um, and that wasn't the cure. So I went to my primary care and I was like, hey, something's going on. I'm just sweating out of the blue. And, you know, left out some of the other things and other details. I
Right.
didn't want them to know that I was having flashbacks and hearing
Yes.
screams and things. And it was just a primary care. And even then, I had a doctor that I had been seeing since I was a kid. And he was older. So he was an old school generation. He's like, it sounds like you got anxiety. With it goes depression. I'm going to put you on an SSRI.
Oh
And so he
shit.
throws a med at me. Doesn't tell me anything, but I'm telling you, that first week I took the med, I got kind of manic to where
Oh
everything was
yeah.
great. I don't know how to explain it, but colors were brighter, sounds
Oh
were
yeah.
better. And I was
Yep.
like, oh man, this is great. This fixed me. I feel so good. I want to go golfing. I want to do all these things.
Yeah.
And right around that time, we lost another friend, Rob Brooks. It was one of the first, actually the first for me in first response that we lost. But I had talked to him 24 hours prior, and over the last 6 months before that, I had spent quite a bit of time on the ambulance with him, and he was just a good guy. He was a Marine. He was in combat, and he was in medic school at the time, but I had spent some time with him, and we'd gone and had drinks and just hung out. But he was a good guy, had a family, and
Yeah.
we just got a phone call that, hey, he drove his car up to the middle of the woods near Conifer and shot himself with a 45.
Jesus.
So we'll be having a funeral. And I was like, oh man, that hit me like a ton of bricks and all of
Yeah.
us. It was close. Within the agency, right? Just smaller,
Yeah.
like not smaller, but your cliques were smaller. So he was in that group with that
Okay.
hung out with some. So that one hit like a ton of bricks. And unfortunately, we had another roommate that moved in with us too, because it was a little 3-bedroom shack in South Aurora. Um,
Okay.
but we dealt with it the only way we knew how, and we threw a party, and we
Yeah.
all got yanked off. Was it Granddad or Daddy's root beer or Dad's root beer or
Oh
whatever
yeah.
that
Yeah.
root
Yep.
beer was that
Oh.
came out, the alcoholic root
Oh.
beer? And I'm
Oh.
telling you, I've never
Oh.
had such a hangover with root
Oh.
beer and whiskey before.
Oh
But I
Lord.
remember having 13 of those to myself, and then a bunch of whiskey and some other stuff. But I just remember one of my breaking points, and it's just so vivid to me right now, is that I called my dad drunk, and he didn't know I drank. They're a very conservative family,
Sure.
and at least I thought he didn't know. So I called
Right.
him
He knew
intoxicated,
the
just
entire
crying,
time.
bawling my eyes out, and he was like, it's gonna be okay, right? And I was like, my dad's never talked about emotion. We grew up to, you don't cry, men don't cry. And he's like,
Yep.
it's okay to cry. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
And I was like, so I ended up hanging up, and I thought I did okay. I got through it, and I took my meds like I was supposed to. And they ended up putting me on a secondary med to help me sleep. So then now you're on a couple other meds.
Hmm.
You're on a med for this one to help you sleep, and this one helps you during the day. And um, I don't know if it was that night or another night, but I woke up in the middle of a dream with a gun in my mouth.
Holy shit,
Um,
man. I'm
so
sorry.
yeah, so I woke
That
up, just tears falling, and um,
I can't even imagine. But
but that scared
that's just
the daylights out of me right after a friend had taken his life, and I was like, how did I get here? I
yeah.
just remember having a nightmare and waking up with it, and just lucky that the safety was on.
Holy
And I was
crap,
like, I
man.
almost ended my life in my sleep. So I was like, I need help.
Yeah.
So I ended up going back to the doctor, and of course, he's primary care. I didn't know anything about psychologists or psychiatrists. Only
Yep.
the things that we dealt with in EMS was I was like, I am not going on a 72-hour hold.
Yeah.
That's what I thought, right? Because I didn't know
Yes.
there was help in between there.
A
And
damn turtle suit.
so I didn't tell anyone, right? Shove
Yep.
that right back where it
Yep.
goes in my dark secret chest of
Yes.
that never happened. And I never told the doctor. And it was years before I talked about it because I was ashamed, right? That
Yeah.
I got to that point. And, I was like, oh, maybe I just need a break. And so that's how I went into like clinical research for a year, did part-time in the ambulance, and I was like, I am more miserable working this 9 to 5 or whatever it was
Right.
and doing it part-time. I'm making less money and I would be happier going back full-time. So I went back full-time, and an opportunity opened up here in a smaller agency, and I moved up here. A friend, my previous roommate and friend Eric Proct, had worked up here before, and so I was like, I'll come up. I'll give it a shot. Slower system. Like, you guys are going to pay me a little bit more, run less calls, and it's the middle of nowhere. How
Yeah.
great could this be? So I came
Amazing.
up and moved up here in 2016. And after being up here just a few months, I got a phone call, and I think it was a weekend, but one of our friends had called and said, "Hey, have you talked to Eric?" And I was like, "No." I was like, "I haven't talked to him, but he invited me to his house last night, but I told him I can't make it. I'm, 5 hours away, and with
Right.
traffic, I was like, there's no way I'm going to drive down there and just have a day off and then spend it driving, and I don't want to be intoxicated or hungover." So I was like, I'm not going to go.
Right.
And they're like, "Well, no one's talked to him. He was at the party last night, got upset, may have walked off with a gun. We're not sure." And I was like,
Oh.
"What?" And so that kind of cascade of events started, and they started a search party. And so I took a couple days off and drove down to the Denver area, and we went looking for him and couldn't find any trace. There was nothing. The FBI or CBI got involved,
Yeah.
obviously, and all of that. And the search went on for, I think it was a year or two. We had gotten, what's that? It's 4 years.
4 years. Holy cow.
Someone like that. It was.
I'm gonna look that up.
I honestly can't remember how long it was, but they finally found his body. He had committed suicide outside of his apartment. And so that was a second, and that one was pretty hard too.
And Eric was
4
a
years.
4
was
years.
4 years.
Yeah.
And Eric was a
That's a long
roommate, right? Living with
Yep.
you, or
Yep, and he worked at the same agency I did initially, and we went to paramedic school together.
how did you
So we went through a lot.
how did you navigate that? I mean, was there anything that you saw, or like anything maybe now in hindsight that you're like, maybe that could have been a clue, or how did
Even in hindsight, I mean, there were times when he would have a bad call, and we'd kind of talk about him because we'd hear him air out on the radio, and we were on some shifts together. So
sure,
we'd hear him on the radio, and we'd kind of just debrief without divulging HIPAA, of course. But, we'd kind of talk about him and be like, "Hey, would you have done this in this situation if they're hypotensive? Would you have done this?" Sure. And so, in hindsight, like, he was still actively engaged in everything he loved. So it
Yeah.
wasn't like there were all these clues. And I had just talked to him, I think, when we were living together and I first got put on the SSRIs, that I was like, "Hey, I didn't know I had some anxiety and depression. Maybe you should go get checked out, because I bet it," and we didn't know a whole lot. And I was like, maybe it runs in first response with some of the stuff we've seen. Like,
yeah,
because I knew he'd come home a couple times crying from some calls that were rough. And he's like, and I was like, "It's okay. Let's drink about it,"
right,
And
yeah,
so, it's looking back on it, it's hard to tell if, like, even if he said anything or if we just both brushed it off. And but I know it wasn't normal to come home crying from a shift.
yeah.
So
Was
looking
it-
at that, like, I wish, hindsight, you could go
Right,
back in
see.
time and see if they would accept counseling, or if EMDR was a thing back then, or if,
Yeah,
it would have been an option. I think a lot of people were also scared of, like, if you sought help, did it
nobody
affect
trusted
your
you.
career?
Yeah,
Did it
nobody-
affect your career? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
if you got diagnosed with PTSD, would they let you work? But actually,
Yep.
it's actually the opposite. Like, it's stronger to get help.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And what's it crazy about Eric's is he had just gone, like, rafting and all these things with his parents. So it was like he's still golfing, still doing all these things. But I think it's a lot of that closed doors things that no one talks about, because he was also working for South Park Ambulance and for another agency. So he had
He's just
two
layering it,
jobs.
in there in that box nonstop.
Yep.
Ugh.
And, for me, it was hard because I guess 4 years, that's a long time. But just the not knowing, right? Like we all had our suspicions. It was like, oh, maybe but there was that small chance that he could have been in Mexico partying,
Yeah,
or
right.
just decided to
Pulled an
up and leave his
Elvis.
life. Yeah.
Oh,
Um, but it wasn't, right? It was the latter of the ones no one wanted to believe. So it kind of was
yeah.
like weird because you mourn the first time they go missing, and you're like, oh, they'll come back. They're a grown man, and then they don't come back, and you're like, at what point do you stop looking and start accepting?
Yeah, there's
And
like
then
that
when you,
long denial, I guess, I would
yeah,
think.
and then when you get the true notification that they are dead, you're like, okay, now you're going to really mourn again
Yeah.
for the loss of that person again. And so that was hard. Luckily, up here in the small community, we have resources that weren't available in the bigger cities, surprisingly. Like, we have crisis counselors that would come out to these bad scenes and check on us. They would
Oh,
come to
okay.
the hospital and check on us. They would hold these debriefings, the critical incident stress
Oh, yeah,
debriefing,
yeah, yeah,
there's
yeah.
prisms.
Yep.
And, after Eric, that was kind of when we separated paths for a little bit, and then we got back together the next year, and it was great. And so luckily, like when they did find Eric and I mourned again, she was there
Appropriately.
for me, and I had no idea that she had seen more than I had. Maybe not more, but she had her own trauma and own ways of dealing with it and own advice. And you know, fortunately and unfortunately, our paths collided with alcohol as well. So
Right.
we would, we'd come home and I'd be like, "Hey, make me a whiskey sour because I had a good day. Hey, make me a whiskey sour because I had a sad day.
Right.
Hey,
Yeah.
you know, this good thing in our lives happened. Let's have a beer."
Yeah.
Um,
And we also had a roommate when we first started, when we moved in together. We also had a roommate who was also a paramedic. And so we were all in that same realm of first response that we could all just, and usually if one of us had a bad day, all of us did. And so
Right.
and it kind of just fed into,
The
all of us
behaviors.
thinking, and yeah.
Yeah. Holy cow. So,
so it was. Oh, go
go
ahead.
on. No, I was going to say, I mean, like, I couldn't even imagine, like, especially because how long you said a couple years, you and Eric were close, and then, like, he's just gone, and then, you kind of get that, man, I can imagine, like, what it was to go through that.
It was rough. I mean, definitely because you don't realize that when you're that close to someone that you still for at least a year after you find out they're gone, you go home from work and you're trying to call them to tell them about a good day that you had. Like, hey, I had a cardiac arrest save. Like, I want to tell someone about it.
Yeah.
Talk to them about it, tell them a good day, and you would still pick up the phone call and try to call
Yeah.
them, and you can't. You don't have that safety net of a best friend that you had.
Yeah.
And so I think that was difficult as well. So just kind of navigating that, and Melissa has been through quite a bit as well. So I think that really helped was having her as a partner that had been through a lot of loss and a
Yeah.
lot of that. And during that time period, like we were both drinking and obviously eating fast food and making some delicious burgers with bacon,
Oh,
tacos, all sorts of food.
yes.
So that was our way of coping, was like food
Mm-hmm.
and alcohol, because tacos have never made me cry.
Oh,
So
yeah. That's truth.
yeah, it all came to a head though. Like you have to hit rock bottom somewhere
Mm-hmm.
sometime. And for us, it happened about the same time. She had been diagnosed with being diabetic and went into diabetic ketoacidosis, and I was
Oh,
310 pounds at the time, and she was like, I have to quit drinking. She had
yeah.
vomited up blood from tearing a blood vessel in her throat, and right after that had been diagnosed with diabetic ketoacidosis. And that was the turning point. It was the catalyst for both of us of like, we need to change our lives. We need to
Yeah.
change something. And I
Yeah.
think she had already been going to therapy at the time, had already been going to EMDR, and I was just like, I'm not going to go to that. I don't need help. I'm fine. And I wasn't. I was on the same SSRI for that same, 10 years at the time. And I was like, it's working fine.
Right.
It's fine. I'm fine. And,
we are so terrible at denial, especially for guys. I mean, like we just it's fine, it's fine, we're okay, and like we're dying inside, but it's like some weird masquerade that we have to put on that we're always okay.
This front, yeah, and it was she had me go to therapy, and I did my first EMDR session, and I was like, oh, that sucked. Like, why
Right.
would you make me do that? Like, that was terrible.
Yeah.
Like, I just cried in front of another man. I've never done that before in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I've never cried openly, and she'll tell you I didn't cry for the first several years we were together. It took
Yeah.
a while to build that trust and things because you just didn't do it.
Yeah.
It wasn't a thing that we did, and so for her to be like, "It's okay to cry. It's okay to break down. We, tacos break and we love them," and
Right.
so,
Yes, good
um,
analogy.
going to the EMDR sessions though, it took a long time. I think it took a few years of going consistently
Yeah.
to clean up all of the crap I had built up internally and how much of it had even tied back into my youth. And I had a great childhood. I had
Yeah.
loving parents. But there are certain circumstances where, no, you're feeling this because one time in Kmart, you told some lady she was fat and your grandma scolded you and you got ashamed. And that's why
Yes.
you feel like that, is it regressed you back to three. So every time someone talks to you in that tone or looks at you in that with that face, it brings you back to that ashamed feeling of when you were three. And
Yeah.
so that EMDR therapy for a few years consistently was life changing, because then I found out, like, oh, I do need to actually go back to exercising and running, and I found
Mm-hmm.
running along the way, and I realized that, you know, if I can torture myself for hours on end by running nonstop, this is great. And
Yeah.
I feel so much better after it. So we ended up getting she got me a home gym set up, and
Okay.
I started running and training for an ultra marathon, and going
Holy
through trying some
dang.
backyard ultra marathons. And I ran my first marathon distance last year in October, and that was
Where'd you do
huge.
that one at? Was that Boulder or?
No, I just did my own. I can
Oh,
torture
okay.
myself just fine.
Okay.
So I just went to one of our local parks with it's got a section where you can do 4.2 miles and you can add a little bit and make it 5. So I just made a
Okay.
game out of it. And I was like, I'm going to run 8 miles, take a pee break, run 7 miles, etc. And did that
Right.
until I hit the 26.2 distance.
Holy
Um,
cow, man. That's awesome.
but I found that is my therapy, is running. And
Yeah.
so through all of this and through all of the first response and her chronic illnesses, that has been like a saving grace for both of us, I think, is like,
Yeah.
one, not drinking. That was huge.
That
Yeah.
was.
Two, actually getting EMDR done,
Oh, yeah.
and finding exercise. Like, that is such a great stress relief that if I know that if I have a big meeting or something, I'm going to go run 5 miles before it. And like,
Right. Just kind of get that
you're going to
jitters out
feel
of
fine.
stuff. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Wow. So I guess, was there ever a moment, I guess, for you guys, like as a married couple, where like you noticed the other was struggling and like said something? And I guess, and for me, I know I screwed it up terribly a few times. Like I argued with my wife about, like, you're stupid, you don't know what you're talking about, like I'm okay. And I think, like, was there ever that moment where you're like, I'm gonna slap you up your head because you're gonna go get some therapy?
There was a moment, but I said, I'm going to call your mom if you do not do this. And he was like, you're going to what? You don't have my mom's phone number. I was like, bet I don't. And I pulled it up. I was like, her and I talk every day. So I was like, I already made the appointment. Get your
Yep, get
butt
your
in
butt
that
over there.
truck. Yeah, I was like, or I've also approved the therapist to come here. So, but I think that sometimes with first response that Nori, can you not? Let's not do that. I'm sorry. Our dogs are trying to, it's raining and it's a anyways,
That's okay.
but you become kind of numb to your own emotions because
Yep.
you have to be, you have to go back into that whatever traumatic situation, and so you don't think about it. And there were times that he'd be like, hey, especially when like my chronic illnesses started, because I was still working. There were times, so I have dystonia, and it's a rare neurological movement disorder. I developed it after going septic from a kidney infection.
Oh,
So I have brain damage, it's a whole thing.
yuck.
But it causes like these really horrific muscle spasms, and I would go to work and my foot would be inverting in my boot, and I'd have to have
Oh,
him like hold on to my boot while he's pulling it off, and someone else hold my legs so they could get the boot off. And he's like, and I would like torture myself to keep going to work. And he's like,
yeah.
you need to deal with, one, need to deal with the fact that you almost died. He found me unresponsive. He had to call 911. It was a whole thing. Um, but he's like, there's a lot of trauma that you're not allowing yourself to feel, because if you
Yeah.
feel it, it's real.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that uh, I think that we both we kind of adopted a responsibility that if we see the other person start to struggle, that we know that,
Kind of got
you
to
know,
pick up some slack a little bit for him. Kind of equal out
And
that percentage between the two of you.
absolutely.
finding out when, like, how long you're willing to let it go where they are in a bad mood or whatever, because we all have things.
Right.
But how long you're willing to let it go before you say, you know what, now it's time.
Yep.
It's been a week and a half and you're in some sort of a slump and I can't do this. You need to do something.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to pick you up and drive you down there.
Yeah, no kidding. Exactly. And I think I'm thankful for my wife because she's like a little force of nature when she needs to be. And she was like, look, you have a problem. I can't fix it. You need help. Go. And I was like, oh, okay. I guess I need to.
Yeah.
Wow. So,
And that's the hard part too, is like, because he feels as a paramedic, he's like, when you're in pain and stuff, I want to fix you. And so that's something that we've also been working on, is like, you can't fix this, you
yeah,
know?
I could see how
Um,
that's a struggle, Justin.
and, him also seeing, I think that no matter how much therapy we go to, there will always be that fear, because he did find me like unresponsive and
Yeah.
GCR3, like I was not doing well. But you also, I think that it, in a weird, not in a weird way, but it also, I think, opened both of our eyes to some of the things that happen in the medical world of, people being like, oh, well, they're just a frequent flyer, so they don't get,
The
they're
care
just
they
here for,
deserve.
yeah, exactly. They're here for a turkey sandwich and a hot blanket. And I think it really showed us both, like, one, it made us slow down a lot, because it's like, wow, this really happening. But you don't think about those things until it happens to you, and then you're like, wow, that's crazy. So
Yeah. So if you guys could go back and look at like younger you getting ready to start your career in any type of first responder field, like what would you tell your younger self? Would you give yourself like a warning or like how would you still convince your younger self to stay in to be a first responder?
You know, okay.
oh yeah, you go
So for
first.
me, it's truly a balanced approach. Like if one thing is off, then everything else is off. So like if you can keep your eating pretty healthy, if you're working out regularly and exercising and you're going to therapy, which I think is huge. Like if you're going to these EMDR sessions, like even once a year, if you didn't need it that year, at least go once.
Mm-hmm.
If
Exactly.
get that slate cleaned. And for me, like also like spirituality too, that's another factor in it because
Yeah.
you can't handle everything and you can't take on everything yourself. And to us, I'm Catholic and I'm a huge believer in God. And so, going back to my faith and everything was a huge game changer too, because like you can't change everyone overnight. You can't
Yep.
do this by yourself. And, there are people that are not, and I respect that 100%. But that's a big factor in my life that if something is off, then it throws everything else off. If,
Mm-hmm.
I have a routine, I'm a very ritualistic person. And,
It has the
you
dogs
know,
on a routine too.
if my routine is off, then I am
Right.
off. And so, it's like every morning between 3:45 and 4:15, I get up, I make coffee, I take the dogs out, I play with them, I go for a run, and the run could last between 30 minutes and 2 hours, but it's my routine. And then I go
Yeah.
to work and I come home and I do these things. And just having that balance. And I think, what I did learn from therapy is the reason I'm like that, and I didn't know, was because our jobs are chaotic.
Yeah.
That is chaos. If you come home to a dirty house every day that you work in these stressful jobs, you don't have a safe place. So if you can
Mm-hmm.
come home and you've been able to keep your house clean, you've been able to do all these things, then you come home to no chaos. And that's where you thrive, is your routine is what you can fall back on, which is not chaotic.
Yeah.
And so I think us both developing our own routines, is like helped keep that in order and help maintain the peace. And so having a home gym downstairs, it's like, hey, I
Yeah.
missed my run today, but what I can do is go lift for 30 minutes or an hour before bed.
Heck yeah.
So it's, all of that, and having the dogs here, right?
Right.
Come home and they are our own therapy. And if they could tell you what we've heard or
Oh
seen,
yeah.
oh
Yeah.
boy, would they wish they could talk. But
Yes. Right.
they're the unjudgmental faces of, the happiness. And even if they annoy us, they're always there with a wagging tail to take on your
Yes.
trauma and
Smile
business.
and
So,
just pet me, please.
Yep.
so I think the biggest part of mine is just that routine and that, that connectivity with all of the different aspects. And just, if I could go back and tell myself, like, hey, have a routine for your spiritual self, a
Yeah.
religious portion, have it set up for your diet, for your food, and for your gym, and balance your work schedule and do all these things and have a work-life balance, then you can still have fun. But you can't go back and say, hey, you can destroy it all at once and get to 310 pounds of pure fluff before
Right.
you figure that out.
Yeah.
I think for me, it would be one, you're not going to save everyone.
Right.
You are going to hear some really, no matter what kind of first response you're in, you will, I think the sights, sounds, and smells are things that will always stay with you. And
Yes.
the smells.
Yes.
But I think that, like, if I were to tell my younger self, like, do the internship, because that's going to show you a lot about the other responders. And I think so with our agency, or one of my previous agencies, we were able to do ride-alongs with all of the counties that we dispatched for.
Oh,
And I
okay.
think that's so important, because then what's going on the other end of that radio is like, the officer's not talking to you because he currently has someone at gunpoint. He literally that's his focus right now.
Yep.
Or, EMS is not telling you that they're not to the hospital because they are trying to put a tourniquet and try to save someone's life. And I think that that's one of the other things. And the biggest thing that I think, not the biggest, but one of them is get to know your coworkers, get to know the responders on the other end of that line. Some of our very best friends now are some of the responders and their spouses, because they put a trust in you as a dispatcher that you will do everything in your power to keep them safe. And the very last thing is that it's a thankless but rewarding career, because no matter what, you're helping change somebody's life, whether
Yeah.
that is you are that last calm voice that they hear on the other end of that line. I know I've prayed with several people before they're like, I'm not going to make it through this.
Yeah.
And at that time, I wasn't very religious. But there's times that what they say in those last moments will stay with you, and it really makes you think about, like, life is you have a whole world at your disposal. And
Mm-hmm.
if you can do one thing, just help somebody else.
Yep. Yeah, I think I think as a society in general, we have gone so far away from like just helping your fellow neighbor.
Absolutely.
Now you see your neighbor and you're suspicious, and you've got to research them online to find out what type of person they are. And I
Yes.
Oh my goodness, truth.
it's just, I think we've gone down a terrible path, and hopefully, we can correct that stuff, because it's rough right now.
I agree. And I mean, we're really good, and we're so blessed with our neighborhood, because we have an elderly man who lives next door to us who we consider an adopted grandpa.
Oh, there
He
you
is
go.
best. We love him to death. Our neighbors next to us are a nurse and her family, and but that it was so crazy, because there are people who are like, "Why did you do that, Nori?" who are I hid the toy because
Oh,
it's a scooter and he
yes.
is now in the
Yes.
thing. But it's crazy to me that there's just no. I made a TikTok. I started sharing my journey on social media with my chronic illnesses and stuff,
Okay.
and we've gained a pretty good size of group that has first responders and all sorts of stuff. But I made a TikTok yesterday and it said like I miss when the human life had value and
Yeah.
when we cared about each other, that there could be a stranger who's having a hard time putting away their groceries or they can't afford groceries and someone would help them. And now it seems like there's just not that anymore. And it's sad and it's
Yeah.
scary because where do you go from here?
Right. I think.
You know?
Yeah, I think I saw there was something I saw on TikTok the other day, and it just kind of made me think. What was it? It was said like 9/10/01 would be severely disappointed with 9/10/2025. I mean,
Absolutely.
it just,
Absolutely.
and I think the bad thing is we're just so desensitized to all of this stuff that we see on a daily basis, and I think it affects so much more just because, I mean, I'm sure it's probably caused stress for you guys in your marriage due to your first responder careers at times, arguments. I mean, sometimes going to work, having an argument and trying to not do something dumb at work. I mean, it's tough. It
It
really
is.
is.
And there's go ahead.
And you don't realize it, but when you're in a smaller community too, like everyone has access to everything faster than you do.
Oh
So
yeah.
people have scanners. They listen to law. They listen to EMS. They listen to fire.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is, you know,
There's
truly
nothing private in those small
nothing
towns.
encrypted
No.
anymore. So what's crazy is like you can go to a terrible head-on car accident, and before you get there, there are photos up on the community chat of that accident on your way
Yes.
to it, and you're like, you don't realize it, right? You don't check it until after, but you're like, oh my goodness, that was up before we
Yep.
got
Even
on
got
scene.
there.
And sometimes even
And
before it's called into
there's
dispatch.
people now that find out about the death of their loved one via social media before law has a chance to go tell them in person,
Yep.
and before they're able to confirm the identity. And it's just hard because now you can't do your job without thinking that there's judgment attached to
Oh yeah.
anything you do. Um,
Yep. And
and so,
everybody's got a camera. Everybody's watching you.
yeah.
Yes.
Um, and, our society now is so kind of sue happy and everything. And, just to protect ourselves and our agency, we have body cameras and we have for
Oh, there
several
you go.
years.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's just to protect ourselves and the good care that we already know we're providing.
Yeah.
And if it ever comes up to question, it's like, hey, here's the body camera.
But
And they
it's
have
This is what happened.
and they
yeah.
have cameras in the front of the ambulance and in the ambulance as well. But I remember a time when before even law had body cams, and
Yep.
I couldn't imagine. It's scary. I have a family member that is looking to get into EMS right now, and they're very concerned because they said like, is it safe? And it's like, it is anything ever really safe? Like you could walk outside and get hit by a car, but
Right.
it's also that risk that there are people that do not like you because you wear a uniform, even
Mm-hmm.
if that uniform is EMS or fire or law. There are people that are not going to like you. We had a uniform at my previous agency that looked a lot like law enforcement.
Oh yeah.
And the amount of times I would get cussed out, I'm like, I'm not law. Like, I
Right.
don't know why you're yelling at me. I'm trying to get a breakfast sandwich. But I really hope, it's hard because social media can be used for such amazing things like this
Mm-hmm.
right here, but it also can be so detrimental. And I couldn't imagine being a child right now, like, or a teen, because with online bullying, you can't get away from it. Like,
Yeah.
we used
It's
to, you leave school, it's gone until you
mm-hmm.
go back to school. But now it's like text messages, Snapchats, like,
And I
Everything.
truly think that there are so many people too that are probably getting hit with this tertiary trauma and they don't realize it on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And we were just actually having a discussion yesterday on like how instantaneous our social media is that, you're inundated now with I remember in the Denver area when we ran a couple like auto peds with like an RTD bus or
Hmm.
something. And it was like not very frequent. You didn't run a lot of them, right?
Right.
But we'd run, on occasion you'd run one, and for the next year, the news would catch on to every RTD accident. And I'll tell you, if you looked at it from the outside view, that agency was out to run people over, but they weren't. It was
Right.
just over-reported in the focus of media at the time. And it's,
Yeah.
right now, like these tertiary traumas are coming because the police officers are forced to, like, I don't know, show, or I guess
Oh, their body
their
cams.
body cams.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
They're
yeah.
that's
they're forced
public.
to make them public,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which great, but you don't need some 10-year-old getting that YouTube of that body camera footage of someone
Yeah.
losing their life. And
Yeah.
but now it's just so accessible. Like, are you 17 or older? Yes. Now they're
Yep.
all being inundated with this trauma. And it's just, I think it's changing our society as a whole, and it's changing how we view death and how we view life and how, you know, everything is viewed, because it's like everything is judged on that split second decision that was made in a life or death time. And
Yeah.
but you have kids inundated with this from the 10, 12 years old with access to phones. Like, now they're watching these body camera footages of horrific things that are
Yep.
happening, whether they're accidents, car accidents. Everyone's got a camera now, and I didn't remember seeing any of that growing up. Like,
Mm-mm.
I remember 9/11, and that was horrific, and my dad had to turn the TV off because they're repeatedly showing some of
Those
those guys,
jumping
the famous ones,
jumpers.
jumping the
Yeah.
jumpers out of the windows. He's like, you don't need to be seeing this. I don't know why they're airing it, but now it's such a norm
Yeah.
to be seeing this. I don't know if I can ever, you can't really scroll these world newses without coming up with three
Something
or four
crazy. Yeah.
police shootings, three or four school shootings, and they all have video of it. And so you're inundated with violence every day.
Yeah.
And so there has to be some form of trauma hitting these kids as they're growing up and molding their brains.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I don't know, it's always so easy for us to blame inanimate objects on everything. And that was kind of one of the things that I was like looking at the other day. I was looking at some statistics, and it's, the last couple years they've had the most deaths and DUI crashes at over 13,000 a year. And I'm like, well, are we going to ban alcohol? Like,
Yes.
almost 41,000 people die from motor vehicle wrecks, but we're not putting background checks on cars. And then,
Yes.
300,000 a year die from obesity, but we're not like locking up forks and spoons, are we? I think
Yes.
yeah, I think we're just so inundated so much with, like, we're just nonstop trauma in our faces, and it's only getting worse.
And it's scary when you think about how a lot, like at first, in the 2000s, it was like we need to ban the violence in video games, like that's making everything more violent. But then it went from like taking some of those games and making them like PG-13 or whatever. But then you go right into the age of social media where it's like, oh, hey,
Hmm.
here's every and they're doing 24/7 news coverage, which like it's a such a double-edged sword, because do we need to know about some of those things? Yes. Does
Right.
it need to be like, does this graphic material need to be shown to every TV that's tuned on? And then it also makes you think, like, do children now think of like life and death as more of
A
like a
joke.
game? Yeah, a joke,
Right.
exactly. Instead of like somebody lost their life, they are not breathing anymore. And I think that the seriousness of death is completely gone because they just see it so much that they're
Yeah.
just like, "Oh, someone
There's,
died, okay."
I don't,
And it's
there's no respect for it anymore.
exactly,
And
yeah,
some of the worst calls I've seen were some suicides, and unfortunately affect
Yeah.
adolescents. And those are bad, right? It's the scene itself. It's the smells, the
Hmm.
family, the mother screaming, and having to tell the parents. And I've told countless, I can't even tell you how many countless family members, like, we did everything we could. They're dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be straight up with them. But now to learn that, that people are live streaming
Yeah.
those
yeah,
horrendous acts, and it's
Yeah.
just astonishing to me as to how, I don't know, how numb our society has made each other,
yeah,
to
Yeah.
these things that that kids are going to need therapy for what they saw on TV. Does that make sense? Like they're going to need
No.
therapy for what they found scrolling on their phone. Like,
Yeah.
And
It.
that's the scary thing is like how like where do you go? So like we're in the year 2025. If this is what's happening now, like something major has to change, because not only is this affecting children, but it's also going to be affecting the responders who
Mm-hmm.
are eventually going to have to respond to the trauma of, if they don't. And how many kids are telling their parents like, "Hey, I saw this on the phone." They're not going to, because they know that they're going to get their phone taken.
Yep.
And I think there's also that disconnect of not being able to be truthful with, that caregiver, that parent, and say, like, this really upset me.
Yeah.
Um, and it's so hard because there's parts of the society that are like the gentle parents. And I'm not trying to say how you should parent your child. I'm just saying, like, there's like such a disconnect between like they need to be listening and they need to respect us and da da da, to this gentle, they don't tell them no, that's going to create trauma. What's creating trauma is the trauma on every news and everything.
Yep.
Like you go outside and you're seeing a trauma like plastered on a billboard.
Yeah.
And I think that that's just terrifying to think of what happens in 5 years, what happens in 10,
Yeah.
like it's.
How are we going to respond, and what are the resources going to be? Because even like right now, like when I started like my work comp stuff for my journey, it was 2.5 months before I could even get in to see a psychiatrist. Like they wouldn't even give me medications until
Oh
I
my
saw
gosh.
the psychiatrist. So for 2.5 months, like I am just absolutely miserable. But nobody really talks about like the resources that are out there, or any of that other stuff, or the fact that I could have voiced an opinion for myself, to try to advocate better care. I mean, you just, it's
it's
frustrating.
so it's hard to advocate for better care when you are also like fighting the demons in your head, when you're like,
Hmm.
I am this close to not doing it. But it and then it's this is something that we saw in all of my healthcare debacle that we've been in, is that when you start to advocate, then you're seen as a difficult patient. When you start to
Yeah.
advocate, then you're seen as a doctor shopper, a pain seeker, whatever. And it's like, I just want you to listen to me, and
Getting into the married aspect of that, and I don't know if
it's,
you've seen it, Justin. Like, so my wife had brain surgery back in 2020. She had a huge tumor that they were able to take out. Thankfully, for the most part, it wasn't cancerous. But like, my wife would ask normal questions that I was like, that's I would have asked a question like that if you're going to cut my brain open, and like the notes that they would put in there on her about like she was hysterical. We spent most of the visit trying to calm her down, and I'm like, I've been with this lady for 28 years, and I'm telling you right now, like that was pretty mild. Like that's a normal everyday tone for her.
I'm not laughing because of that.
oh
I'm
yes.
laughing because we've got. I also had brain surgery. I didn't even choke you. I barely pushed you. We have a mini Aussie for anyone thinking that we're abusing him. Anyways. But I had brain surgery in 2021 to put in a stimulator device,
Okay.
and yeah, the machine broke while surgery was happening.
Oh
And
no.
so I was calling to try to say, like, can we get me in sooner? Because we flew here, and he had to actually take the phone because they were like, yeah, they thought I was being hysterical and that I was a
Yeah.
difficult patient.
But it's crazy. You look at some of those notes after the fact, and you're like, just she said care at so many hospitals, and looking at some of those notes, it was like, I did this, 10-minute neuro assessment on this patient, and I was like, no, you didn't. I was
Yeah.
there. Why are you
Right.
charging us for a 10-minute neuro assessment when you walked in, looked down, and said, oh, no, you're fine. You'll need this, this, and this. And then they leave. You never laid hands on her. You never did a physical assessment. And, to see the notes of all of this stuff saying that everything's normal.
Yeah.
And I'm like, had you actually had her take her shoes off? Like her feet are inverted.
Right.
You
Yeah.
never had her take her shoes off. Her neuro assessment is not normal. And so it's just frustrating being on the other side of it and just seeing some of the medical gaslighting across the medical system as a whole. And so, that's why I'm thankful for where I'm at in my position and with everything that we advocate for, that we can help. be
Yeah.
that change.
So do you
I love
guys,
that.
I was going to say, do you guys do like do you help folks train for marathons to kind of help break through the barriers that they're having, or how are you guys?
I haven't tried that.
Well, no, you
I've helped some people get back into running, but I'm not
Okay.
like a coach or
Not
anything.
doing any of that
he
stuff.
he
Not like
has
a coach, but if people wanted to reach out and ask how to get
Okay.
started and all these things, I'm more than happy to help. And
Okay.
he also shared his some of his runs and stuff on TikTok.
Okay.
But we are very big in the mental health for first responders, nurses, doctors, things like that.
Sure.
Where we have done different fundraisers for like the Code Green Project. Stop Soldier Suicide. He ran 50 miles with Oakley, who you can't see, but he's actually the pup that saved my life.
Oh,
He woke
okay.
Justin up when I was septic. What else? There was another. We've done stuff for ovarian cancer research, Dystonia Medical Research Foundation, but we're big on anything that we can do at sharing our. See, I'm getting beat up. I swear, like we're not.
We have a
It's,
grand pup that's a mini Aussie, and just like that, I
oh
totally
many
get it.
Aussies are rude.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's like
it
parkour
has.
off of you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I'm not like a coach or anything for that, but if anyone wanted to get into running, I'm more than happy to answer questions and to
Nice.
show them, the ropes and tell them how to go.
Yeah.
One thing I'm thankful for at the agency that I'm at now is that we really, being an EMS manager, I really advocate for my people to take PTO, to take time off, to
Yeah.
talk about these calls. But I also recognize that several of my employees have been doing this as long as I have.
Yeah.
They have their coping mechanisms, and what's cool is like a lot of them utilize EMDR now.
Yeah.
And just recently, I'm sure you're aware already, but within the state of Colorado, they have Path for EMS,
Yeah.
which is state funded money that goes for 15 free therapy sessions for
Oh,
first
okay.
responders and their spouses, specifically EMS and their
Okay.
spouses. So you have to have a valid like EMT, paramedic, or AEMT cert to
Okay.
qualify. You send them
Okay.
your cert number, you email the lady, and there's like 30 different places you can get therapy, either in
Oh, that's
person,
cool.
online. And so last year she utilized the sessions that I didn't need.
Okay.
And so
Heck
it's
yeah.
great. And so if there's a therapist that you see or whatever that that is not on the list, they can put in get on the list themselves. So,
Okay.
even the state's finally starting to catch on as well that hey, this is an issue with first
Yeah.
responders. How can we help?
They're just going ham on
So,
that. Oh, I
so I
think,
think
yeah, that's one of the things I think that I hope is finally catching on, and we start funding mental health more. Like for the longest time, we quit doing it, and I think we seriously need to like fund that again tremendously.
and I did see a rumor that they had decreased some funding in the Denver area. I think was it firefighters
Might have been.
or PD? I can't remember, but it was in the last
Oh, I
6
think it
months.
was
And I
for
was
the
like, that's
police
pretty
department.
disappointing.
Yeah, I
It was
think it.
pretty disappointing, but
Yeah,
it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But
right. It's a
you know,
struggle, but hopefully we can get something done about it.
yeah, and I think it has to start from the top as well, and recognizing that there's a problem,
Yeah,
and how can we help this? How because you know being in the field for as long as I have been, I know what it's like to not get things taken care of. So for these new guys that we're bringing on, I'm like, hey, you need a therapist. You're going to need to find one. And I'm telling them, just as you said, like some of the things I wish I knew before. And it was like, I'll check on them after their first cardiac arrest, after their
yeah,
first pediatric call, after all of these calls. And I'll check on them throughout a couple days beyond. And
yeah,
I'll check on them in person. And I stay late. I come in on the weekends and I catch some of the crews. And I'm like, hey, how are you guys doing after that?
yeah,
Or I will physically go to work after a hard call, and I'll help them put the ambulance back in service. I'll see
yeah.
what they need.
I think that's one of
Yeah.
the things that, and I don't know, maybe it's as a leadership kind of generational change happens right now, because like, I mean, my bosses were like, I've never been in a critical incident before. I don't know what you're talking about. But I think when you look at some of that stuff, because they are that generation, like we grew up with, you suck it up, you don't cry. But I think as we start and have the new leadership come in, you're going to look and see that, there's going to be more check-ins, with your subordinates to make sure, that, hey, I know like you're doing right now. That's absolutely amazing. There's a rough call. Like, how are you doing? Do you need some time? I mean, that's amazing, man.
Sometimes I'll even, if he's like, hey, I'm gonna go check on the crew, I'm like, hold on, because I'm really big into sourdough and baking. And so I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
hold on, I have something. And I'll like make some cupcakes, or I'll like the next day or something drop off some snacks. But I think that's a huge thing that I've noticed like within dispatch is that I think in Colorado they just finally passed that
Yep.
dispatchers are considered first
Recognized them.
responders. But I think that a lot of times dispatchers are left out of like the critical incident debriefs and different things because they're
Yeah.
like, well, you just took the call. And that's not just like, for local agencies, that's for a lot of, because I have a lot of friends that are dispatchers
Yeah.
or even dispatchers on TikTok. And a lot of states still don't recognize them as first responders. And so they don't get the same access to the same type of help that
Yeah.
police, fire, EMS do. And I think that that's something that I'm hoping one day we'll get. I have a really good friend who just became a supervisor in Wyoming, and she's pushing hard to get those like mental health check-ins, get mental
Yeah.
health covered under their insurance. Because that's another thing. They're like,
Oh, yeah.
here's five appointments, and it's like, what am I? I just listened to someone's last breath. You're gonna give me five appointments? Thanks. That
Yeah.
helps me.
And
First one's to get to know you. The second one's to
Yeah,
get to know your
exactly.
childhood. The third one, we might look into it.
yeah,
Yeah.
you
So
don't
it
ever
takes a
accomplish
while.
anything in those five
Yeah.
No,
deals.
and if you have to pay out of pocket, it's expensive, $150, $200 per
Yeah.
session. And like, and they're like, oh, you're gonna need at least 15 sessions. Or like, am I supposed like? And everyone knows first responders do not make the money that
I'm gonna
people
have to work
think.
a bunch of overtime just to pay for the trauma to the copy to the trauma.
Exactly, and then I'm
And
gonna
then that'll
listen
get
and
me
learn.
more
Yeah,
trauma.
exactly. Yes, exactly.
Yes.
It's like,
So
cool, but yeah, I think that I'm hoping that as one thing that social media can be great for is people continue to share their voices. But I do note there's always that fear. What I've noticed on TikTok at least is some of the responders are like, I want to share, some of my story, but I'm worried about what my agency will do in retaliation,
Yeah,
or
and that's kind
and
of
that's
one of those things I worry about with some of those folks is, what are the social media policies? And if it violates your
absolutely.
policy, like, please don't, like, I don't want to get you burnt at all.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
but I think there's far more of us out there that have trauma and we've buried it and we've struggled. And thankfully, a bunch of us have overcame everything. And I think for me, like, kind of my healing process is telling folks about my trauma to be like, look, like I even taught, this survival class, on how you do this stuff. And I still screwed up. Like I still failed. Like, so let me tell you my story. So hopefully you don't make that same mistake.
Absolutely. And I think it's also hard when you're a first responder to say it. Hey, I messed up. Like there was a
Yeah.
call that I, as a dispatcher, completely messed up. A trooper went out on what was supposed to be a pedestrian contact, and I couldn't hear where he said he was at. And so I asked him to repeat it, and then I still couldn't understand. And it was like, I was like, this area is like 5 square miles. It's not very big. I found that out. That was not right. But I asked him to repeat it one more time, and he was already out of his car. Didn't have a pack set.
Oh,
Or he did have a pack set, but must not have been listening, or whatever happened in that first interaction. And then he hit his OIT. And my heart sank because I don't know where you're at. I don't know where
hmm,
I'm sending anybody. And so I'm asking my partners, can you hear where he's saying? And his car, a lot of them had like the GPS where it would show you on
yep.
the map where you're at. His wasn't working.
Oh,
And so I'm trying to get him. I'm like, can you tell me where you are? Give me a cross street, give me something. And he's like fighting for his life. and I couldn't tell where he was at. So I'm calling the county that he's in. I'm like, I don't know where he's at. Do you know anything that sounds like this? And that was the worst call of my life, because when you get that kind of overconfidence of like, I can listen to the recording, I can figure it out, it's not that big of an area. Thankfully he was okay, but the person that he went out with had like 7 felony warrants and a nationwide extradition for murdering a police officer. And I was like, you don't know, and so that was something. When I became a CTO, I was like, you better make dang sure that you know exactly where they say they
Yep.
are, because if you don't know, if they call out shots fired, if they call out anything.
Yep. You got to know.
Yeah, so it's hard to talk about those, because you're like, I messed up. Like I knew better and I messed up. And I think that's also part of you have to take the humility out of it and just be like, yeah, no, like learn
Yeah.
from my mistakes so that you don't make the same mistake.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I think I think sometimes it's hard for us because we don't want to do that to ourselves. We don't want to be like, I messed up on that one. But
Yeah.
I think sometimes, honestly, like having those little like mini debriefs, even, where you can talk about stuff and I screwed up, this is what we could have done better. I think those also play like a healthy role and stuff like that. So,
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's something that we kind of use in our marriage too, of like, hey, like not debriefs, but kind of like, hey, like, not even if it's a bad call or anything, but just like, hey, you've had a rough week, you're working, third outs, fourth outs, mutual aids, all of those things. Like, are you okay? Like, do you,
yeah.
and kind of taking that where we both were at our rock bottom and rebuilding, the life that we have now. I think that's what made us. But I think with any first responder couple, it's really important to have those hard conversations,
Yeah.
because, alcohol is not going to solve it. Whatever else, vice that you may have is not going to solve it. Because at the end of the
Right.
day, when you lay your head down, you're going to have a dream about it.
Mm-hmm.
But it can be very hard sometimes to be like, hey, this is like, I'm really struggling, but it's important to just.
Yeah.
And I think those open line of communications in marriage is the most important. And,
Oh, absolutely.
we've been married several years now. What is it? 7 years? Coming up
7 or 8, yeah.
coming up on 8. This is seven
Yeah.
and a half, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But just, 7 year ago me would have been like, hey, talk more.
Right.
Like, or at least be open and be like, hey, I am not doing well. I am not doing well with X, Y, and Z. Like,
Yeah.
this is stressing me out. I'm being pulled in 12 directions. Like, can we slow down on one or two of these and take something off our plates? Can we, this weekend, can we just have an us weekend and literally sit in our PJs, sleep in until noon, and just recharge
Right.
our batteries? Can we,
We have
can
we have
do
Harry
this?
Potter weekends in my house, so there's like
Oh,
no phones, and
yeah.
it's just Harry Potter from
Yes.
one
So
to the end.
And you have no
Yeah.
idea how healing that can be.
Yeah.
Just to be like, I don't care if the dishes pile up today. Do whatever. Like,
Mhm.
what do you want to eat? What do you want to make?
Yep.
We'll get back on our routine starting Monday, but for this weekend, it's all about us. It's about
Yeah.
us.
Self-care.
Yep.
Self-care
That's self
weekend,
care. Yep.
the massage chair, the hot tub, the hot
Yeah.
showers.
Heck
Yes.
yeah.
Um, so I think that's the biggest too, is just recognizing that in the other person, and having that open line of communication is the biggest key. Is like,
Yeah.
you can talk to each other and just say, hey, I am in a terrible mood today, and it's not you, it's nothing you did. I'm just going to be in a salty mood, and I'm going to go cut some wood or do some yard work and be to myself. Like,
Yeah.
I need to just sit down and read a book today. I need to do this. And just being open and upfront instead of holding that in
Yeah.
has been huge in our marriage too, of like, because you need to know, like, our trauma developed brains from all this PTSD. Like, I don't know about you, but anytime the wife is mad, I always think it's at me. So,
Yes. Oh
and
my
it's not
God.
necessarily 99.9% of the
Yes.
time I'm the innocent one. It just
Yeah.
happens to be that
I
she
take
is
it.
now stress cleaning because she had a bad day, had a bad combo with her parents, something else happened, and she's stress cleaning and slamming the cabinets, but it's her way of
Yeah.
devolving, getting rid of that
I,
stress is by cleaning. And it doesn't mean I need to go pick up the mop and be like,
Yeah, I'm over here
So
crying in the corner, going, "What did I do? I don't
Yeah,
yeah,
know."
and I'm
so
like, you're in my way. What are you doing? Why don't you go sit down? Go
Yes,
watch TV.
so
yes,
it's it's just recognizing that that's their way of dealing with it, and I think being accepting of it, of like, if you're having a bad day, you know how to deal with it. Go work out, go for a run. Be like, I
yeah,
need to go for a run in the morning. You don't have to explain why. Just say like, I had a bad week. I'm gonna go for a run. And she's like, okay, let me know when you're back. Or like, do you know? Just guesstimate like how long are you gonna be gone? Because it could be an hour, it could be 4. And I'm like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and I
Right.
also asked like,
Um,
where are you going? Because
Yeah.
we have a lot of
What
bears in
area are
that.
you running to?
Yeah, like
yeah,
just tell me like a general area, just that way, like I know, because we have a ton of bear, moose, mountain lion. Like, just let me
deer,
know.
deer can be rude.
Yeah,
Deer
dear.
would beating the daylights out of some people. But yeah, just, let me know when I should start to get worried and let me
Yeah.
know where I can start to find you.
And so I think, I think that's huge too. And we found a love of some board games, Yahtzee,
Oh yeah, there you go.
some Monopoly, some board game nights. So just creating little fun date nights and making sure that you have time for your loved one is a huge coping thing. Even if you're not talking about anything, you're just sitting there in the moment. It brings you back to some of those childhood things that
Yeah.
brought you that happiness and just recenters you, like,
Yeah, I try to do like excursions, like kind of like making memories. Like we did the Savannah Bananas, and my wife wanted to do like Billy Currington, and we did his concert, and then we saw Chicago, and like
Oh, wow.
it was I mean, it was
that's
kind of
cool.
a compact summer. Like for 3 weeks in a row, we had like something every week, but then it was great. And now like I don't know, college football's on, so I'm busy every Saturday now watching football.
And that's
Yeah.
what helps you get through it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and how long were you in first response? 20
Wow.
years?
So I started in 2003. So I took a break. I did, the Marine Corps first, was in law enforcement, tried to go back to the Marine Corps, couldn't get in, did some time on active duty in the Navy, and then got forced
Wow.
out in 2012 when they did that force reduction. And my wife's from
Yes.
Pueblo, so we ended up here. I tested, and I was working for Pueblo for 11 years when I got medically retired.
Oh, wow.
That's a long time. So you
Yes.
in Pueblo, I am heard stories from Pueblo.
Oh,
So
it is absolutely like every
and
crazy
I'm
story you've heard is either true or like 10 times worse.
Yeah, they're like, oh no, that's not actually what
and
happened. Let me tell you. And it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
it's bad when now live PD is showing up in Cannon City and Pueblo in the
Yes.
Springs, and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
busy there. It's very
Yeah.
busy.
It is
Yes.
absolutely
And
insane down here. And thankfully, I don't have to worry about that anymore. And I like the folks that are still doing it. God bless them. But it's rough right now.
I can't, yeah, um, I have some friends, who one of them works for dispatch in Pueblo,
Yeah.
and he's like, transferred from here, and he's like, there's a lot that I wasn't prepared for.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so, yeah,
Well,
because I mean, we're in a small town. We don't have a ton of, we our bad stuff is way different than
yeah,
that bad
right.
stuff. So but yeah, I hope everyone's safe down there.
Yeah, me too. Well, is there anything else you guys can think of, or did we get everything, or?
I
I
feel
think,
good.
yeah,
I think that was really good. I appreciate your time and letting
yes,
No,
us
I appreciate you guys. I
talk
know,
about
like,
you.
we had to kind of reschedule. Like, life
I
gets
know.
busy. It's okay. Like, I get it. But thank you guys. I will actually, so I just got to pretty much download it and we'll get it put up tomorrow. But thank you
Okay,
guys. Have a blessed
me too.
day. And
You too.
I might just have you stay on for just a second here.